Hello there. For our tasting today, I have a Beaumes de Venise, and this time it is a Muscat, a sweet Beaumes de Venise. This is Domaine de Bernardins 2022 Muscat de Beaumes de Venise. Now, Domaine de Bernardin are regarded as one of the leading producers of this appellation, and the production of Muscat is very traditional in this part of the southern Rhone. There are records, evidently. Pliny the Elder in the 1st century AD writes about seeing Muscat being grown in this region. To be fair, at that stage it wouldn't have been a sweet wine, because an essential stage in the production of the sweet wine, a vin doux naturel like this, is the addition of spirit from moutage. And at that stage there wouldn't have been the availability of spirit for fortification. So it's actually not until the 14th century that you get sweet Muscat de Beaumes de Venise being produced. Now, the name Domaine de Bernardin commemorates the fact that this property was once owned by the Bernardin monks. However, in the early 19th century, that was when it became a wine estate. The estate's been owned for 5 generations by the Castaud family. And somebody called Louis Castaud in the 1940s was one of the leading figures in this region, and he was influential in ensuring that Muscat de Beaumes de Venise gained recognition as an appellation, which it did in September 1945. He was also instrumental in building the reputation of this domain. And today his granddaughter Elizabeth, with her husband Andrew and their son Romain, who is the winemaker here, run the estate. The estate has 25 hectares of vines in total, and 17 of those hectares are planted with Muscat vines. Of those 17 hectares, 75% of that is Muscat Blanc Petit Grain, generally regarded as the top quality clone of Muscat. The remaining 25%, however, is Muscat Petit Grain Noir, which is a dark-skinned mutation of Muscat Blanc Petit Grain, which actually sort of gives quite a bit more perfume and style to the wine. The estate's vineyards lie on the southeast slope of a geological feature. It's a limestone outcrop called the Dentelle de Montmirail. So quite a steep limestone outcrop, a white cliff which overlooks these southeast facing vineyards. The best soils here for the growing of Muscat tend to be the sort of soft limestone soils that have an amount of gravel or sand in them. The climate is a warm, dry climate. However, the feature that is the Dentelle de Montmirail shelters the vineyards from cooling winds coming down from the Massif Central, just giving a little extra warmth and ripeness to the fruit that grows in this tiny corner of the southern Rhone. The approach to viticulture here is sustainable, and they like to do as much as possible by hand. Pruning is done by hand, debudding, deleafing, bunch removal and harvest is all done by a team of 5 people, joined by more casual workers at times such as harvest, when there's more work that needs doing. All the grape solids that are left after crushing and pressing are turned into compost. Those get ploughed back into the soils. As well as being certified for sustainable agriculture, the estate believes in promoting biodiversity as much as possible. So around the vineyards you'll see wild rosemary, you'll see cypress trees, you'll see almonds growing. There are olive trees, and evidently there are capers growing. So really quite a typical Mediterranean setting. Now, they're not completely organic. They will use chemicals if they absolutely have to, but where possible they'll just do more manual work to try and avoid that if they possibly can. The vines that produce this wine are 50 years old, and yields are kept down to 30 hectolitres per hectare. As with the plantings, the blend is about 75% of Muscat Blanc Petit Grain with 25% of Muscat Petit Grain Noir. The grapes have to have at least 252 grams per litre of sugar at harvest. Fermentation goes on in neutral stainless steel tanks with temperature control, just to slow the ferment to allow as many of the delicate aromas to be maintained. Fermentation is monitored very carefully, and at the time that's judged to be correct, moutage goes on, the fortification, with the adding of a 95% pure spirit to the fermenting must. Fermentation has gone on entirely with indigenous yeasts, and after fortification the wine must have at least 110 grams per litre sugar to qualify for the appellation. The wine ages in tank for a further 6 months prior to bottling. Now, I was interested to see the producer suggest that this could be aged for 10 to 15 years. It's not a style of wine I would normally consider giving long aging to, so I'll be very interested to see how it tastes and what I think of that. Now, my initial reaction is that the colour is incredibly dark. I was really expecting a paler, more yellow and orange sort of colour. This is almost the colour of a sort of a deep, dark orange marmalade or something like that. There's a golden, almost heading towards tawny, sort of amber colour. The wine has to have 15% alcohol, and unsurprisingly, it's forming pronounced tears on the glass as I swirl it. There is a lovely vibrancy to the colour, I have to say. That sort of beautiful bronzed orange there, as I say, makes me think of a sort of a nice rich marmalade or something like that. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? The aromas are quite powerful, they're quite pronounced, they're very perfumed and they're rich. Muscat will normally have some sort of grapey notes to it, and there certainly is an underlying almost sort of sultana note, such as the richness and the concentration that we have here. But those notes are overlaid by a beautiful perfume, and I think the depth of colour and the lovely perfume are really showing the addition of that 25% of Muscat Petit Grand Noir that's coming in there, that's giving us sort of a rose petal note, an almost Turkish delight aroma, and is giving the lovely dark colour there, despite the fact there's no maceration. The aromas are rich and there's a lovely complexity. There are some notes almost of sort of candied peel, of sort of toffee, caramel, those sort of notes, but there's no overlying oak or anything like that. So the aromas are entirely fruit derived. So let's have a taste and see what we make of it. On the palate, the wine is very sweet, it's rich. There's a broad, ripe, full-bodied sultana note spreads across the mid-palate. On top of that, there are those sort of rose petal notes, the Turkish delight flavours coming through very vividly on the mid-palate. The richness and the concentration of the sort of dried fruit notes on the mid-palate are stopping the alcohol from seeming hot. There's quite a good freshness. I wouldn't say it had particularly high acidity, but there is enough acidity there to lift the beautiful perfumes out of the fruit to give a sort of a Turkish delight note on the finish. As well as the perfumes, you've also a sort of a burnt sugar, a caramelised note for the very finish. And the flavours last really quite well. I did check our Wine Searcher's score for this vintage of this wine, and I was a little surprised to see it was only an 87. To my mind, the wine has slightly more complexity and intensity, and it would justify a slightly higher score than that. I'm not sure that I would age this for 10 to 15 years, because I really enjoy the elegant, lifted, delicate perfumes on the nose and on the back palate. However, I do think there's enough concentration of that sort of syrupy, ripe sultana note that this would develop over a period of time. And if you came back to it in 10 years, I think you'd still have a very enjoyable wine to drink. And given its ageability, I think perhaps a score more like sort of 89 or 90 would be fairer to this wine. So thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have enjoyed watching it, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more, do please consider subscribing to our channel. We would really appreciate your support. If you have any comments you'd like to make, please leave those in the comments box below. We'd love to hear what you think about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else relating to that. I'll leave a link in the notes to the Wine Searcher page for this vintage of this wine so that you can find out its pricing, its availability, and you can see any more background information that we have on it there. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to forward it to them. That would be fantastic to have your support in that way. But most importantly, I do hope you'll manage to take some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Hopefully see you then. Bye for now.